Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Beth Ellicott.
And you're listening to the midweek version of Fiber Talk, the twice weekly podcast for needlework artists. All right, this is the podcast week, so no Stitch Hour. We'll be back next week with a Stitch Hour, and that'll be a Stitch and Chat, so we'll have something to give away and ideas to help you spend your money, because that's what we do.
That's right. We're very good at that. We're very good at that.
Yep. Sunday's guest, oh boy, I'm really looking forward to this one. We haven't recorded it yet. Susan K. Williams, the chief executive at the Royal School, and Isabella Rosner will be our guests. They're starting a project, which is massive, I'm sure, to digitize the RSN, the Royal School collection of tapestries, needlework. Wow. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that, what it's going to be, how it's going to be set up, the accessibility, so on and so forth. And Isabella Rosner is heading that up, so we're going to get the lowdown on that. Yeah.
And I'm so looking forward to recording that. That's going to be fascinating, and to talk about how. I mean, that's going to take years.
Oh, I'm sure
to get that done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Anyway. It'll be fun to talk to her.
Yeah, it's going to be great. And Isabella sent me 15 photos of pieces from the collection, and so we'll do a little slideshow on the website page, on the podcast page website. I'll put up a slideshow, and then I'll use all of those in the video that we put up. So you'll be able to see 15 pieces from the collection, and it's nice viewing. Yeah.
Yeah, drool worthy for sure.
Yep. Yeah, so that'll be Sunday, so that'll be great. Coming up. And then we have coming up in May with the Royal School, we'll have a piece on all the work they did behind the scenes kind of thing for the coronation. So that's the next one from the Royal School. Yep. That. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
We definitely have questions for them for that one.
Oh, boy. Yep. And then last Sunday was Kathy Andrews. If you have not listened to that, latch on to that. That was a fun conversation with her. Well, she's always fun. Talking about samplers and some of the research and
her class that's coming up. And I'd been eyeballing it, and I went to a guild meeting on Saturday. And several of my members of the guild have already signed up for it. And I thought, oh, good. I think we'll do a little study group with it, maybe. Within my guild. Is it the Trevelyan needle case?
Right. Needlebook, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Needlebook, yeah. So that'll be fun. It's fun to gather as a group, and then you can ask questions. If you're stuck on a section, you can get help from each other. But then also, if all of us have the same question, we can all ask it on the online forum,
right?
And get the answer together and work through it. It's fun to do things like that.
Yeah, Kathy and I talked about that a little bit in the podcast. I think that's something people should look at for any project that, say, a guild does, or even if just 2 or 3 or 4 of you are getting together or are doing the same project. Pick a day, pick a time, and get together and stitch and help each other out, or just enjoy doing the project together.
Right.
Meet at a Starbucks in the afternoon when they aren't packed with people and stitch. Yeah.
Right. And
but don't do it at lunch. Don't go in there at lunch or dinner and suck up a table that really is hurting their business. Do it in the middle of the afternoon. Yeah.
Right.
Don't do that.
And actually, we've started that. There's the grocery store chain around here has like a little cafeteria area.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of them is not busy in the morning. It was dead the last few when we met there, and so we went in and we all ordered drinks or got something to drink, and then we sat and stitched. And big table, the light was great, and they were working on canvas pieces together. So yeah, it doesn't just have to be the Starbucks.
Right.
Some of these, like it's one of those huge grocery store chains. It's a regional chain, but they all have a little cafeteria area, and there are dead times. Order some food, maybe order your lunch when you're done, or order a breakfast something, and then sit and stitch when you're done eating, or before, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's nice because some of the ladies did not know, were learning how to do needlepoint, and so it was kind of, well, let me show you how to frame up. We did the whole thing right there at the cafeteria.
Yeah,
it was great fun.
And you don't have to rent a room or register, reserve a place or anything. You can just show up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and if it's dead time, they don't mind.
Right.
But yeah, don't do it. Those people who sit there at lunch hour and Panera Bread, when people are looking for tables and they're sitting there with their laptop and they've obviously been there for 2 hours and they aren't going anywhere, sucking up an entire table that, over the course of an hour, 3 or 4 people could use. I mean, that's a business. They're trying to make money. Get out of there.
Right.
But in the afternoon, when there's nobody around and the employees are looking for things to do, yeah, they'll be glad to have you. Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's perfect because then it's nice and quiet and you can spread out.
Right. Yeah, but you're right. Buy a cookie, buy a drink, put a little money in their till, and then when the dinner rush hour starts to come in, or the lunch, then get out of there. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And even most of my friends are like, okay, well, we're going grocery shopping now because here we are.
There you go. Yep.
So it was convenient for us. It's a nice, think outside the box a little on those. But yeah, and it's fun to gather with the friends and stitch on a similar object. Even like we're all doing canvas pieces, but I'm looking forward to seeing if we can find a time to meet and work on that needle case, because just to help each other along, encourage each other to not let it be another UFO sitting in my stack of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and if you're all working on the same one, it's just fun to be in a group, and if you have a beginner, like you said, who's never done it before, they appreciate the support, and it just improves the enthusiasm there. Yeah.
Right.
So, catch that from Kathy Andrews last week. That was she's doing some interesting sampler research. The thing I enjoyed about that is what she's looking into is the history of the various motifs and the text and the alphabets.
Yes.
Because we talked about that. The typical interest is the girl who stitched the thing, and that's interesting to a point. But to me, that the other part is what's really interesting. Where do these symbols and motifs come from, and how do they get moved around the country or across the ocean or any number of things? And Kathy's doing some work on that, so more to come from her on that too.
Yeah. That'll be very interesting. And I know she talked about the Sampler Guild, which I'm also a member of. I don't make many of it's just a Zoom meeting. But they're, again, an interesting group of people who are very interested in researching samplers. So, definitely an interesting group of people involved there.
There's getting, maybe it's just because of the people we're connected with, but it seems like there's getting to be more interest in the history end of samplers and learning how they're all interconnected than in the past, where it was, I bought people everywhere buying samplers and reproducing them and looking up the story of the little girl and writing up a little thing about that and then selling the charts. And it's how we all get them and how we enjoy them. But there seems to be a lot more interest in learning more than just enough to do a chart. And
Right. Right. And why did they stitch those samplers? It's always like, well, they need to learn their alphabet. Well, okay, is that really true? I always wondered that. And then, marking samplers or some of the band samplers, why did they do those? Why did it stop? That's the other thing. They had a short period of time and then they moved to different, more to spot motifs. And I'm like, or they started with spot motifs and they moved to these band samplers. Why? Why did that happen?
yeah.
And it's a curiosity about all that.
Right, because a lot of it was to learn the alphabet and learn so you could stitch names on clothing and do those kinds of things. But a lot of the samplers that we have today that we're stitching, those are not marking samplers. Those are not training samplers.
No.
They're art.
Right.
Somewhere there was a shift to say, all right, let's do more with this than just rows of alphabets and numbers. And because most of the ones that sell these days are like the one you just finished from Queenstown. Now that
Yes.
come on, that was a piece of art. That's not some training thing so you can go get a job. That's that's art. So
Right. And why did they move to mainly cross stitch? That's my burning question. Why did they move from doing satin stitch and Montenegrin and long arm cross to mainly cross stitch?
Yeah, because the older ones have all those stitches.
Right.
A variety of stitches. Yeah. How come that went away? Right. Good question. Yeah.
I'm just curious.
Human laziness, or or it was just simple. Why'd that go away?
Right. Right. Why did it go out of fashion? Because obviously it's a fashion sort of thing.
Right.
Too. Well, so and so is doing cross stitch. I want to do cross stitch too.
Right. Because that bunch of charts that we bought from the assembler, those are all. That's not just cross stitch. I mean, those are sophisticated stitches and a collection of things. Yeah. Why did that go away? That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know.
Because it's not like embroidery went away. Embroidery didn't go away. So why did those stitches get removed from samplers and we just end up with just making X's? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. Good point, Kathy. Make a list.
Kathy's like, yeah.
Make
Maybe somebody already knows. And they'll fill us in.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. See, that's to me that's why people say and samplers, whatever. But to me, it's the one aspect of needlework where there's so much more behind just the X's on the linen.
Right.
And that makes it, to me, even when you're stitching them, there's so much behind that there isn't on, say, the latest design from Nashville.
Right.
There's more to it. Yeah.
Right. I think, and I always just wonder, like the Queenstown has that big bouquet in the center, and there's so many of them that have that big. So when did that come into fashion? And I'm sure there's archives of those things, and I'm like, yeah. So when did it switch from smaller little motifs to this like big floral stuck in the center? Because there's several like that.
Yeah.
That I've seen reproduced, and it's like, why is it imitating Berlin work? Because that was popular for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Schlichter.
I don't know.
Schlichter. That's the name of the one you just did. Yeah.
Yeah. Susan Schlichter, 1845.
Right. But yeah, exactly that. See, that's not training somebody to get a job. That big pot of flowers. No way.
No.
And that's like this beloved one that's sitting right in here next to me, with the birds in the middle. No, that's not training. That's somebody created that piece of art, and some little girl stitched it. And why? Yeah. Where did that shift happen? Yep.
Right.
and why was it then, okay, so it's going to be two birds or a big pot of flowers. Then why did they do it in needlework instead of painting or coloring or drawing?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then I keep thinking what's hitting in my head just now is the Baltimore, they're called Baltimore quilts, I think. But they had those big floral applique in quilting. They're applique flower pots, and they look very similar to that, like that big flower in the center of Susan Slichter. And I'm like, okay, so when did that translate into, because they were extraordinarily popular. If you go to a quilting museum, you'll see them, where they've got these big old different flower, and it, very ornate applique on these pieces.
Uh-huh.
And you're wondering, and now I'm thinking, well, how did that translate? When did that move over to there?
And did they both have the same origin?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, yeah, that's where, yeah. And a lot of it will never be known because the history is just not there, the written or whatever. But yeah, those are the questions. Yeah. Yeah. Could you take those, every one of those flower pot things that are similar, and there are plenty of needlepoint examples of flower pots, old ones, wool on canvas or wool on that Penelope canvas. There are plenty of those. Yeah, can we take them all back to one or two or three photos or illustrations? Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Right. And or yeah, the books. There was some lady who did she did she did paintings from South America. She's very well known, and I can't think of her name. Now I have to look her up. But she did drawings of plants and bugs, was what she's known for, and then they were translated into needlework. And I'd love to see that. Okay, how did that get translated down?
Yeah. See, yeah, so much fun in all that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Adds a dimension. Yeah. We were talking the other day because I was gushing over Vicki Clayton silks.
Yes.
Holy smokes. There is something to be said, and silks are not cheap. I appreciate it. People say, "Oh, I don't want to spend the money on silk." I want DMC, and I'm going to get it at Joann's for the cheapest price I can, and blah 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 blah. Man, you get a good silk like Vicki Clayton or NPI or something, a good silk.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing like it. Just nothing like it.
Absolutely. And I was telling you, I had to rip something out. I'm working on Modern Folk Embroideries Sal. I can't remember the name of it, the 2024 Sal. And I had to rip a little section out, just a few stitches. And sometimes with some silks, it just shreds. And so you might as well just take it all out, and start a new thread.
Yep.
This, I could take those few stitches out, manipulate my thread just a little bit, and I could re-put those stitches in, and they look fine.
Yep.
Without any problem. In fact, I just ripped a huge section out where I made a mistake. And if you were at the point where you needed to use a little section of thread, like you had one cross stitch and you were out of thread, you could use it. I could have used it. And I threw it away because it was a huge section and it was a little fuzzy, but it still looked lovely. And it just goes through the fabric so nicely. It's smooth. I was trying another silk and I was just fighting with it. And I thought, I can use a silk on a smaller project. For this huge project, I need a good silk. I need something that I'm going to be happy with, because this is going to take me 2 years to do.
Yep. Yeah, well, that Sarah Parr thing that I did, and I'm not going to name the thread anymore because I'm not going to beat on them anymore because I love their other stuff. But that was I don't want to say an irritation, but it was always kind of a thing that hung over the project because the silk would get fuzzy. Yeah, if I had to pull anything out, I just pulled it all out and threw it away and started over. And and I went from that to Vicky Clayton silks, and exactly that. Oh, geez, I got to pull these stitches out. I might as well take the whole thing out. Nope, don't have to. Pull them out.
Right.
Redo it right. Yep, good to go. Yeah.
Right. Right. And it's just lovely, and it stitches. I'm not fussing with it as much.
Mm-hmm.
You get a good tension on it, and away you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I just think they're beautiful, and she comes in such a nice range of colors too.
Yeah. Yep. And is kind enough, promos for Vicky Clayton, but kind enough to do conversions for you. Really,
right.
I mean, she'll do it on any chart, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But she'll take the DMC and then find threads from her line of colors and post it, and anybody can have at it. And
right.
Yeah, I'm amazed that she does that because that's a lot of time.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and that and because there was one, I think it was the exemplar, Jane Turner. I was like, okay, I could go through her list, I'd find the colors, put them in my cart, and I thought, I'll send her a photo and see if she'll do it for me. And that's what I did. And sure enough, she goes, yeah, I'll get that for you. I was like, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Because, to look through them after a while, I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she's very nice about that, about doing that. But her silks are lovely. Her silks are just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, because Kathy Andrews, I'm thinking about, because I have an empty scroll bar, which is just yes.
This can't not be.
Yes, I do. And so I'm thinking what I should do is start Ann Ferguson. And I think I'll start by looking through the silks I already have of Vicky Clayton's and seeing what I think would look good.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's quite a few in Ann Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
And then going from there. Because I think that piece would be lovely in silk because you've got some satin stitching in there.
Yeah.
And I really want silk on that.
Yeah.
Part. So I'm like, oh, yeah.
Oh man, an empty scroll bar. That's just, I can't even imagine that.
I know. It is.
Wrong.
It is. It's wrong. I got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Empty stretcher bars is one thing, but empty scroll bars,
No,
absolutely not. No.
That reminds me. I gotta sit down with my charts. I gotta find a sampler that I can do single color and do it on that 18 count paper.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's on my horizon. To just a simple, because it's 8.5 by 11 or something size is the paper. Yeah. Do it over one. I mean, you can do it over one because you're not going to have anything collapse. But do a red, a single color sampler and do it on paper. I think that would be cool to do. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so it's only so big. It's only 8 by 11, but you could do something similar, like your band sampler,
right?
Where you pulled motifs from the from Bristol samplers,
right?
Or pull pull motifs from other samplers. But if you're doing it in single color, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, but you can have a bigger sampler because you're going to do it over one. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got to find the right one because I just think it would be really cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but you know what? And I've got to look into it more. But there's someone is selling like frames for the perforated paper now. So when you hold them, I was when I was in Albuquerque, I was working on my couple of pieces that were perforated paper, and my problem with that is that it catches on the edge. Now you could tape the edge, but I never do that. But there's some sort of magnetic holders that you just slip the paper between it and it holds it tight so that you can stitch and it doesn't catch on that edge. And then other people have also complained when they hold the perforated paper, it kind of cramps their hand.
Oh.
From holding it, because you're holding it with one hand and stitching with the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how you were going to hold that perforated paper if you were going to put it on a frame.
You just gave me an idea.
I'm
just going to go downstairs to the old saw and cut some thin lengths of wood, and then I'm going to buy some magnetic tape that comes in a roll with an adhesive back, and put a strip on each piece of wood and clamp them together over the perforated paper.
That would work. That would work.
There's my grip right there.
And because especially with something that big, if you're working it in hand, I would think after a while it would get dirty.
Right.
You're holding it and the edge is going to get dirty and you're going to get mad because it's going to catch the edges. It's like canvas.
Well, I actually had been thinking that when I do it, I would get some cotton gloves. Because, yeah, you're right. After a while, the oil is going to get into that paper. But now, if I make these just, because you could just do little wood slats and put the magnetic tape on. If you do it on both sides, it should be strong enough to get through and hold together.
Right. That's a great idea. Oh, I got to talk to my woodworking husband.
There you go. Yeah.
He needs a project.
Yeah, scrap lumber. Yep.
Right.
Use it.
Right. And I know I have magnetic tape from kids' projects in the basement, so there's got to be some of that too. Or I know when my son made me my bead box, he put those little rare earth magnets in it, and that really does snap close good. But that means he'd have to drill a little hole and put it in and make it flush. And yeah, no, I can tell that's not going to happen already. So I'm just talking about it. He's like looking at me like, "Are you out of your mind, woman?"
I think the tape, the magnetic tape, that'll probably do it. You don't need a lot. Okay, there we go. Scrap lumber to the rescue. That's why you never throw away lumber from a project.
That's right, because you're going to need it.
It looks like it might. It looks like it might accumulate and like it should just be thrown away, but nope.
Is that what you tell Marga?
Yeah, that's actually what I tell myself. Throw that away. No, and then And then I've got little pieces of 2x4 cut off. That just cut off the end. I stack those suckers up. I can't tell you how many times I've used them to prop up a painted something while I'm painting it, or I use it to hold something up while I'm drilling a hole in it, or whatever. Yeah.
Right. You need them.
You need them all. Keep them all. Yep. Yeah, and I should throw some away, but nope, not gonna happen. Nope. So I was going to ask you now. So we talked Vicki Clayton. I love NPI silk and Vicki Clayton because now you've got me addicted to it. But I've never stitched with 103. Is that quality too? Is that really easy to stitch with?
I really like it. It is round. So I don't know how to describe it. So it's got a twist to it. So it's more like, how pearl cottons. I consider pearl cotton round.
Right. Yeah.
But it's very nice. It's like I think it's a little thinner than a regular thread. So if you need something if you're doing over one on a high count, it's perfect for that. And actually I used it on the Susan Schlichter because there's some over one, and I did some with DMC and swore while I did it, and then I used and then I went and I was like, I'm going to pull colors that I have, and I used that and Swasserfine on some of it because I didn't have the right color, so I thought, well, I'll just use the Swasserfine, and then it looks nice, it's fine. but it's just lovely over one for doing over one. And then I used it for Spring Hill. We had that conversion with Kathy Ray.
Yeah.
And of Rosewood Manor's piece. And that was just beautiful to stitch. It does have a nice shine. And I like it because it's just a single thread, and it's just nice to use. It's smooth to stitch with.
And that's the way it comes. You don't separate it, right?
You don't separate it. You just use it as is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know people use a lot of the soie surfine or the 103 on the really high count linens.
Mm-hmm.
I just, on 45 count, I'm using Vicki Clayton silks. And it's got beautiful coverage, and it's nice. But I think you could go to the 103 on the 45 count, but it'll be a little thinner.
So the 103 to fill in, you need what, 50, 60 count?
I use soie surfine for the 50,
okay,
60 count, and then I use 103 on the 45.
Okay.
So, but that's just what I like, and other people use 103 on the higher counts because they like it a little plumper.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it has to do with how hard you tug on it, because we're working on the 17th century by Thistle Threads, the whitework sampler, and I had to move to the 45 count with the Soie Gobelin because I just couldn't pull it tight enough.
Okay.
And our friend Deb DeCrane's using the same threads, but she's using the 5263 fabric, and hers is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's her Japanese embroidery training, where she can really give it a good. Her tension's a little tighter than mine, and I just know my tension is looser.
Yeah.
And so I was struggling, and I thought, why am I torturing myself just to say I did it on this high count?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm moving to something else.
Yeah. There's no badge for that. Yeah.
No. I mean, and hers is beautiful. But it's lovely stitching with a Soie Gobelin on that 45 count.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's, I should go, well, I'm going to move. So if I make noise, sorry, people, I'm going to go look. I think, because I can see my pieces across the room, I think I don't know how you would tell somebody, and Kathy Ray would know. But is the Soie Gobelin thicker than the Vicki Clayton? I'm going to push them both next to each other. I'll send you a photo later, so maybe we can look. I think the Gobelin's thicker just
than
a little
Vicki
bit.
Clayton.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's thicker than the 103.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's lovely stuff. It has all of them have a beautiful sheen, and I think that's what I like about the silk.
Yeah.
It has a shine to it that the cotton doesn't have.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing against good old DMC, because that's what I did. Susan Schlichter it.
Yep, and that's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing. DMC's beautiful.
Yep.
DMC's beautiful.
Oh yeah, we've seen that time and time and time again, where somebody will do, one or the other is doing silk, and then somebody comes along with the same design in DMC, and
Right.
It's
right.
as good or sometimes better. Sometimes the colors are richer and better, and
right. because DMC has such a huge range. Now maybe a Verissois has a range. Do they have the same range of colors?
I couldn't tell you. It's got to be close.
I don't know. Yeah, but still, DMC has a huge range, so you can really add depth to your piece.
Mm-hmm.
But
you got me thinking here. Is it next level stitching? If let's just take samplers because they're easy to talk about. You're doing a sampler. next level stitching to start, depending on what the motif is or whatever you're trying to achieve, to start playing with round or flat threads to create dimension? Would they give enough dimensional change to matter, or are you just monkeying around the monkey round? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. And it would depend on the piece, because I've often wondered about changing some of the stitches on some of the motifs on pieces as I'm stitching, and you're doing all this cross stitch, and I think, oh, I wonder what this would look like if I did a bunch of Smyrna crosses, or if I made this into a satin stitch instead of doing it as charted.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know if a round silk versus the flat would make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I'm confident it would if you're using flat like they use in Japanese embroidery. Because I mean that stuff's like ribbon flat.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I just was thinking, would it be, and would it be enough of a change that you wouldn't pick it up looking at it, but the overall impact would be altered enough that it would carry more meaning? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Probably more hassle than it's worth, but whatever.
Right. I do know that, like, when you put those satin stitches in with the silk on a sampler, when you get that right, it just shines.
Yeah.
It just shines. There's just no going around it.
No. That's getting it right. You lay it right. You get the tension right. Yeah. It's it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Things to think about. All right, you just came back from New Mexico.
Oh, that was fun.
I'm not going to ask how much money you spent, but I will ask, did you have to ship it home UPS, or were you able to carry what you bought?
I was able to carry what I bought, and it did come home with me on my backpack versus going into the belly of the plane. So
good move there. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, it was. It was, especially considering my flight. It was very good. It was very good.
Yeah.
It was fun. I went to the cross stitch store, which was the Stitcher's Garden. And what I found interesting was she's one of the few places I think that still cuts fabric to size. And my niece was with me, and that's why I went to that shop first, is she said she wanted to learn to stitch. So I said, great, we'll go to the cross stitch store and see if there's something there. And of course, she found something. But the owner says, I will cut you a piece to size, whatever piece of fabric you need for this little piece, I'll cut it. And I was like, wow, most stores don't do that anymore because ends up being a lot of waste for them. And it's a lot of work. It is work. But she said that her customers are so used to it that they'd rebel if she didn't do it. So,
yeah, because it does, because they end up with these little strips of cloth and little squares that you really can't do a whole lot with. Yeah, and
right. And actually, she had a whole basket of those. And because it was a small project, we started looking through those first. I said, let's look and see if we can find a scrap that she has. And, but of course, no, not in the right color, not the color she wanted. So, but it was fun. It was fun to shop with my niece because she was very excited to learn. She picked the first few projects she picked. It was like, well, that might be a little hard. So we picked something that just had two colors in it. The owner again suggested just using a DMC for the white because you couldn't see the variegation, and then a variegated for the other part, which, it's fun to play with those if you've never stitched with a variegated thread. And so she was pretty excited. And then we went to the needlepoint store, which is where I was excited because that was just wall-to-wall threads. And I picked, the nice thing was she had big rolls of canvas, and I was picking canvas for Fibonacci square, and she goes, oh, and I don't know her name, and I need to find out who had their piece, but she had one of her teachers had stitched Fibonacci square. So we carried that around with us while I was pulling colors, because that way it helped us decide, what colors I needed to pick for my canvas and for threads. So I ended up picking two pieces of canvas.
I interrupt you here. Just to be clear, we're talking about Fibonacci swirls, right?
Swirls. I call it squares.
Fibonacci,
yeah.
And that's the Cyber Pointers March project.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And right. And it's in the ANG magazine if you have it.
Just to make sure people didn't get confused there.
Yes, always. I'm always confused. But because she had so much canvas, I went ahead and picked two pieces of canvas because I thought, I don't live close to a store that has this.
Mm-hmm.
I might as well just pick them both up. And then we picked two colorways. So now I have two colorways to stitch on Fibonacci swirls. And that was fun to pull colors. And she was very helpful. And, we laid them out. And we were like, oh, no, that doesn't look right. Oh, yeah, that looks good. And just kept playing with the threads there with her. So.
All right, now back up the truck here. So now you walked out. You flew home from Albuquerque with two colorways, threads and canvas for Fibonacci swirls.
Yes.
Was that because you just were having great fun doing that, or you intend to do it twice, or you're going to decide later which one to do?
I'll probably try to do it.
She says
simultaneously.
Yes, all of that.
Yes, all of that. Yes. I'll probably try to do it do both of them at the same time.
Okay.
And just to play with the colors, because one canvas is turquoise and one is like a yellow. I think it's called buttercream or something, but it's a nice, pretty yellow. The turquoise canvas with the threads, we're like, everyone who sees that picture, they're like, oh yeah, that's the one. It just sings. We could pull the colors. It just looks great. The other one looks okay, but we just didn't get it to make magic. You know how sometimes you pull colors and you're like, yes, that's just right. It looks great. This other one is like, it looks good, but not perfect. So I'm hoping what I can do is I'll probably pull from my own stash and see if something else would make that really work.
Okay.
But I'm planning on doing both at the same time is my hope.
All right.
Because so there was a time when I would work a piece and I generally worked it at least 3 times if it was needlepoint. I would do it maybe the way it was charted, and then I'd say, what if I do this? And then I'd change it, and then inevitably the guild would say, oh, do you want to teach that? And so I'd do it one more time while I taught it. A lot of times I like doing things more than once because then I can really see how to change the colors. And if you're a member of Cyber Pointers, someone posted recently a photo of their Fibonacci swirls, and she used threads from her stash. She said she changed some of the stitches, and then she added something. You know how it's got blank canvas in the 4 corners? Yeah. She added something there.
Okay.
And it was just beautiful what she did. And she said, yeah, I just used threads from my stash. And I thought, oh, I should challenge myself to do that. Because I have stash. Or inventory, as
right,
as Cindy would say.
Yeah, you've moved on from stash to inventory. Yes. Yeah. So I find this interesting. So because you sent a picture or posted a picture of one of your colorways, and so you have one that that's locked in, but the other's still a work in progress. Then.
Yes, because it's not. It needs something else to it. It needs something removed and something else added to it to make it just be better.
Yeah. And it will come to you.
And it'll come to me, and it'll be a matter of pulling threads that I already have. And I think the problem is the yellow. If you quilt, that's one of the hardest colors to find, I think, or it used to be, because it was, you either had like lemon yellow, or you had like mustard yellow, or you had something in between, but it was just never quite the right color of yellow.
Yeah.
And because I dye my own threads, I might look through some of those and see if I have a yellow that would work. Because that might be the problem. It might just be, I need to pull, because most of them they're too bright, or they have too much orange in them, or they look muddy, like a mustardy color, and that wasn't right either.
Yeah.
So it's like I had to find something in between. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, you don't see much yellow in any design. And it must be because it's just so hard to get the right one.
Right. And it's like using a whole lot of, if you use just a little bit of red, your eye will be drawn to it. If you use too much, it looks like you've bled on the piece. So it's got to have that right balance. And I think yellow might be the same way. So I wonder if that's why the other colorway with the purples and the turquoise worked, because the turquoisey green acts as that kind of yellow. So I don't know. Maybe I'll move more to a yellow green on the other colorway. Yeah. Not turquoise, but something. Yeah, I'll have to pull it out and look at it some more.
All right.
But it was fun to pull through those threads, Gary. You're lucky that you have needlepoint stores close to you that you can look at threads, physically look through threads.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's if you want to see variety of threads, that's where you go. Is go to a needlepoint store.
Right.
Yeah, because they'll have a much bigger variety than say a cross stitch store. Yeah.
Right. And my niece had a good time because she had never seen variegated threads. So I set her in front of the Threadworks cottons. And I said, you can pick 2 for you and 2 for your sister, who also does, she does embroidery. And I said, you can pick each. And so she was FaceTiming with her sister. You can pick 2 of these colors. So that kept her occupied while I did my shopping.
Yeah. Okay, so you taught her to stitch. What were the biggest hurdles as you're teaching her?
We really needed more time was one thing. We ran out of time. So I forgot how long that takes to teach someone, from start to finish, how to keep your thread needle threaded, how to start, how to stop, all those things she needed to be taught. She knew some. She knew how to thread a needle, but she didn't know how to ply thread, which she needed to learn.
Yeah.
So that was time, and I should have factored that in. I didn't know my brother was going to pick her up so soon. That's the deal.
Blame it on your brother.
Yeah. I needed more time with my niece. But the other thing was just sitting down with her, and she had picked 2 projects she really, really liked. And I should have had her start the needlepoint project first, because that's the project she loved.
Oh.
And it was one of those stitch and zips where it's all finished for you.
Okay.
I don't. You can get them about anywhere, but it's a canvas that's been printed, screen printed, so it's not perfectly thread painted.
Yeah.
But everything's in there, and I should have shown her how to start that piece. She did come the next day and ask, how do I do this? And I was like, oh, this probably would have been the first, should have been the first, because it's just a half cross. So it goes really, really fast instead of doing the full cross stitch. But
yeah, no, I just wonder because when you get somebody who's just starting, things we
Mm-hmm.
take for granted. I'm sure that was more than once like, oh yeah, that's right. I don't even think about that. But
Right.
for a new person, it's
Well,
it's a step.
right. And teaching how to read a graph, we kind of went over that. And I knew she would catch on quick. She's, got a science mind. It's, reading, had to go over two. So at first she was counting every single thread. We started her on an even weave. I don't know, I think it was 28 or 32 count even weave. And so it was like, oh, but not linen,
Mm-hmm.
Lugana or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so she was counting every thread to find where she was supposed to be. And then all of a sudden she was like, oh, I just need to go here. And I looked and I was like, yep, that's the right spot. So all of a sudden she knew, she could see the grid. She could see what she was, the pattern. Because you don't normally count 1, 2, and then here, I'm going to go up here. You just go right over 2 linen threads.
Mm-hmm.
But to teach her to do that, she had to count it first.
Yeah.
And then once she got it, she was like, oh yeah, this is easy. And then we discussed how to go around a pattern. To go up and then go back down and then to go around. So she covered her whole little motif and then to end and then start the next motif. So, how do you get around a motif? How do you go from one point to another with something I needed to show her?
Yeah.
And for us, it's just automatic. Well, obviously you go here, or maybe this is a better path. You don't necessarily think it over too well.
Right.
You just do it. You just get so used to doing it. But that she needed to be shown that. Yeah. And that kind of surprised me. But then I was like, no, of course, duh.
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting thing. Mary Corbett's blog this week, her Monday blog, is about that. How do you tackle a project? And of course, she's doing it from an embroidery perspective. But what elements do you do first and second? Where do you start? Do you do all the same color pieces at once? I mean, there's something there for everyone to think about. A lot of times the designer will say start in upper left and go this way. Like Ann Rogers, it's very common for her to start in the middle, and if you don't, you'll regret it. So just do what she says. But I think that's an interesting aspect anyway. How do you approach a project in terms of what do I stitch first and what do I stitch second, and all the way through. And then of course I'm a big proponent of taking a moment before you start a section and figuring out your stitch path. Where are you going to go with this? And particularly in cross stitch, I think there's a lot to be said for how are you going to stitch if you have a little branchy tree or something. How are you going to go about that? You're going to start at the trunk and you're going to go half crosses out to this branch and back, and are you going to try and do 2 branches in one thread? And to me, there's a lot of that pays off if you just take a moment to think about it.
Right. And then because then you're keeping your stitching a little neater if you're thinking about it, and it makes a difference when you end up framing the thing, or finishing it off, and that's the important part. And then I was working on a goldwork heart, and I realized, I outlined it, and I thought, I'm not supposed to do that yet. I was supposed to put the little flame in before I did the outline. And now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, I'm sure I can fix it. I'm sure it's fixable and I can work on it. But it's like, well, if I'd followed the directions better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it's that thinking. I was, trying to see what I could do, and it's not unfixable, but it would have been better if I'd stopped and I'd said, okay, shouldn't the flame go in because it's going to go underneath these stitches?
Right.
And that would have been, duh. But anyway.
Yeah, but those are the things that are worth analyzing and thinking about, whether the designer gives those instructions or not.
Right.
You know, and are you, if you do this section and then do the surrounding stuff, are you going to be fighting with the threads that are already in place as you try to stitch it? Or if you flipped it around, would it go better?
Right.
And what about what's on the back side? Are you going to end up punching through threads on the back side and making life miserable and scarring up your thread? Where if you'd have done it the other way, you'd have clear cloth and not have that problem.
Right.
I think that stuff's worth, just pausing for a moment and analyzing what you're going to do and where you're going to go with it. I think overall you end up with a better product.
Right. And even, and two, if you think about it for a moment, sometimes you'll save yourself counting errors
Mm-hmm.
on cross stitch pieces, especially
Yep.
because if you say, well, I'm going to do this motif here, but you've got to count all the way. And that's one thing I taught my niece is like, okay, let's start with this little motif here. We've given you 3 inches of room all around this piece. So you have lots and lots of space. So even if you're a couple of threads off, it's really close to the edge. So it'll be fine.
Yeah.
If you start right here.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that makes a difference.
Sure. Yeah. Anything that simplifies the counting makes a difference for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You
right.
put this
right.
here, and then you can use the edge of this to get to the next one. And
right.
The first stitch on the next one is on the same line or the same space, and it's only 10 away, so you're starting in the right spot. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can help yourself a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're thinking about. All right, we need to do an overrated, underrated.
Okay.
Oh, we just did it. Here, I had one. I had it on the list. Determining a stitch path. Overrated or underrated? Way underrated for me.
Yeah, way underrated.
Yeah.
Way underrated.
Yep.
Okay, I do have one more I want to ask you. What about needlework books? Overrated, underrated?
That's a good one. I'm going to say underrated.
Yeah, I think so. Because working on that goldwork piece, I went and pulled the books that I just received for Christmas and started looking through them to get some more information about doing gold work. And then it's there. I can open it up. It's 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I can read through the book and find the information I want. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would say underrated because Goldwork is a classic example. Now there, I think if you have a couple of good Goldwork books, because then you can see, these two authors both do this particular thing the same way, or this author has a little different approach, and that speaks to me more, so I'm more comfortable with that approach. It gives you some cross-reference sources if you have a couple of books. And Goldwork is a classic. Whitework, Hardanger, that kind of thing is another place where a good book, a good Yvette Stanton quality book, way underrated because it will just make things so much easier and enjoyable. Yeah.
Right. And even just looking through the material lists for the Goldwork, they're one of the two books that I was looking through, it listed whether the Goldwork metal, the thread you're using, is going to be shiny or if it's going to be dull, and it had a whole list of them in order, so that way you can decide, I want this bark to be really shiny, or no, I don't want that as shiny. I want it to be a little dull. And I was like, ooh, all right, now that gives me ideas on playing with these threads that I already have that I've never used, and I don't know how to use them. But now it kind of gives you that creativity.
Right. Yeah.
step out of bounds.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, needlework books, to have a small library of them. Yeah. That's underrated.
Mm-hmm.
They're worth having. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Because Sunday night, late, you're stitching, can't call somebody for help. Oh, I've got a book that stitch was in there. Let me haul that out and see how it's done. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And get ideas from.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Really
yeah.
nice.
Yeah. I'd like to do this. How do I do this? And
Right.
take out a couple books, and there it is. Yep. So underrated there. Have you ever taken a book to Office Max or whatever? I don't even know what they're called anymore, and had them chop the spine and put a spiral thing on so it'll lay flat?
It seems like I've had it done one time, and it's been a long time. But I'm wondering if I don't need to do that to at least one of these coldwork books, so it'll lay flat, so I can have it close by while I'm stitching on the page I want it without having to put something heavy on top so the book doesn't close. Yeah, and I would think like the Yvette Stanton ones would especially benefit from that, because I was working on a Frisian piece, and the book kept closing on me, and I'm like, oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that'd be a good idea.
It goes against everything I've ever felt or learned about books, which is to protect them and treasure them, and don't let them all get beat up and dirty. But and it would be really hard for me to do it, but I've never done it. But there's for needlework books, like I know I've been in that spot where I don't have two things heavy enough to hold this book open at the spot where I want it open.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you're flipping. Like I was flipping between a couple of pages. I was learning a stitch, and then I was looking at a picture, and so I was going back and forth, and I was like, this is a pain.
Yeah.
Now, and again, I hate to make a working copy of something like that.
Right.
Because it just doesn't seem right on that. It's different if it were like I did make a working copy of a section of the pattern, but that was just because the pattern was so huge. I needed a small piece of it.
Yeah.
But again, for my own personal use, it's been going to be destroyed,
Right.
It's trash, but I don't know. I didn't necessarily want to do that with the stitch itself.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. But some people, that's normal. They'll get a book and off it goes to chop the spine off and make it spiral bound so it'll lay flat. And I got to believe you feel good about it. Oh man, that's really hard for me to say to someone, here, chop the spine off this book.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh.
I understand. I totally understand.
Yeah, but they don't lay open. Yeah. They're a battle. Yep. So a good library is worth having. Yep. And
absolutely.
even if you're never going to do a project, there's resources in there that are worth having. Yep.
Right. You don't necessarily need it for the projects within the book, but the helpful hints, whatever is in there, ideas.
Yep. All right, that's enough. Got to stop.
All right.
Oh, geez. I guess we do have to stop. Okay. All right. Sunday, Royal School of Needlework, the project of digitizing the entire Royal School collection. Headed up by Isabella Rosner. Holy smokes, that woman's got a job on her hands coming up.
Yes,
I
she
have
does.
a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, that's it. Next Wednesday, we'll have a stitch hour. So there we go. Thanks for listening.
Bye.